Amanda Parker looked like the perfect wife, but behind her flawless smile, she was living a double life that would end in blood, betrayal, and the unthinkable truth. Amanda Lewis always seemed like the kind of woman everyone envied. She had a beautiful home in a quiet Illinois suburb, a reliable husband who worked hard, and 2 children who adored her. Neighbors saw her as the perfect wife and mother the kind, who always had cookies in the oven and a smile for everyone passing by. But beneath the surface of her flawless suburban life, Amanda was restless. The comfort of routine that once gave her peace had started to feel suffocating. Her days blended into each other's: school runs, groceries, cooking, cleaning, and every evening ended with her sitting alone, staring at her reflection in the dark window while her husband Mark typed away on his laptop. She told herself she was happy, but deep inside she knew something was missing. It started with something small. A simple message on social media from an old acquaintance saying she looked great. The compliment lingered in her mind longer than it should have. For the first time in years, she felt noticed. Amanda began to dress differently, wearing perfume she hadn't touched in years, paying more attention to her appearance. She told herself it was harmless. But as more messages came, flirtatious comments, compliments, late-night chats, her curiosity grew. She didn't realize it then, but that small spark of excitement would become the start of something far darker. Mark was a hard-working man, always focused on his job as an IT engineer. He spent long hours on projects, sometimes even bringing work home. Amanda used to admire his dedication, but now it made her feel invisible. Every time she tried to talk about her feelings, he brushed them off, promising to make time later. Later never came. She began to feel like a ghost in her own home, living beside a man who no longer saw her. That emptiness drove her to seek attention elsewhere, though she never admitted it aloud. She wanted to feel alive again. One afternoon, Amanda joined a fitness class at a nearby gym. It was something new, something for herself. That's where she met Jake, the instructor, a confident, charming man with an easy smile. He noticed her right away, offering extra encouragement during workouts, praising her progress. His compliments made her feel attractive, wanted. Their small talks before and after class grew longer, more personal. Eventually, one conversation led to another, and Amanda found herself caught in a moment she didn't plan. What began as casual attention became the first step into a secret world of temptation. The thrill was intoxicating. For the first time in years, her heart raced, not from routine, but from risk. Every time she met Jake, she felt younger, bolder. But the excitement soon faded, replaced by guilt that crept into her mind like a shadow. She promised herself it would stop, that it was just one mistake. But once a line is crossed, it rarely stays behind. Amanda had tasted something she couldn't let go of: the rush of being wanted. She began seeking that feeling again, convincing herself she was in control. Her second affair began with a man from her workplace, a colleague who often stayed late at the office like she did. He was older, with a quiet charm and understanding tone. Their relationship built slowly, hidden in plain sight. Amanda learned how easy deception could be: lies told through smiles, excuses disguised as errands, and passwords changed to keep secrets safe. With every step deeper into deceit, she became better at pretending. Mark never suspected a thing. He still kissed her goodnight, still called her the love of his life, while Amanda's thoughts drifted elsewhere. Soon, her need for attention became an obsession. She created anonymous social accounts, chatting with strangers who admired her pictures. It was never about love. It was about control, about feeling powerful again. Every man she met gave her something different: excitement, comfort, danger, validation. She began living 2 lives. In one, she was the perfect suburban wife and mother. In the other, she was a woman no one truly knew. But maintaining both was exhausting. Amanda started lying to herself as much as to others. She told herself she deserved happiness, that these men filled the emotional void her husband left. Yet, deep down, fear began to grow. She knew it couldn't last forever. Secrets like hers always find their way to the surface. The turning point came one evening when Mark came home early. Amanda hadn't expected him. She was on her phone, lost in a message from one of her lovers. When Mark walked in, she quickly set the phone aside, smiling as if nothing happened. He noticed her sudden nervousness but said nothing. That was the first moment doubt entered his mind. From then on, he began to observe the way she laughed at her messages, the times she stepped outside to get fresh air, the sudden change in her perfume. He didn't want to believe what he was seeing, but a part of him knew something wasn't right. Amanda's world grew more tangled when she added more lovers to her secret life. 6 men in total, each unaware of the others. She met them in different places, kept their names stored under false ones in her phone, and used clever tricks to hide her tracks. She thought she was clever enough to handle it all. What she didn't know was that one of them, a man named Derek, had fallen for her deeply. He wanted her completely, and his obsession would soon turn dangerous. Every lie Amanda told built another wall around her. The thrill was fading, replaced by fear. She often stared at herself in the mirror, wondering who she had become. Yet, she couldn't stop. Her addiction to secrecy and excitement had taken over her reason. She began to believe she was untouchable, that no one could uncover what she was doing. Mark, meanwhile, was quietly piecing things together. He started checking her phone when she wasn't looking, scanning bank statements, and noticing unusual receipts. There were hotel charges, unfamiliar names, and gaps in her stories. The image of the loyal, loving wife he once trusted began to crumble before his eyes. Still, he stayed silent, wanting proof before confronting her. Amanda had no idea that her perfect facade was slipping. She was too focused on balancing her multiple affairs, too lost in the thrill of deception. But deep in the shadows of her life, cracks were forming. One jealous lover, one suspicious husband, and one careless mistake. That's all it would take for everything to fall apart. She didn't know it yet, but the web she had spun was about to trap her completely. Every secret she thought she could control was about to collide. The lies, the affairs, the hidden meetings, all of it would soon come crashing down in a way she could never have imagined. And when it did, it wouldn't just destroy her marriage. It would destroy lives. Amanda's story began as a search for attention, but what she found instead was destruction. Behind her perfect smile, she had become the architect of her own ruin, one secret at a time. The house that looked peaceful from the outside was about to become the setting of a scandal that would shock everyone who thought they knew her. And by the time she realized how far she had gone, it would already be too late to turn back. Derek had been just another face in the crowd when Amanda first met him. He worked as a mechanic at a small auto shop on the edge of town, someone she met by chance when her car needed servicing. He was younger, rough around the edges, and carried the kind of charm that came from confidence rather than words. Amanda wasn't looking for anyone new. She had already promised herself she would stop. But Derek's energy was different. He looked at her in a way that made her feel like she was the only person in the world. That gaze became impossible to ignore. What began as a casual flirtation turned into late-night texts, secret drives, and a dangerous connection Amanda couldn't control. For Derek, Amanda was unlike anyone he'd ever met. He had grown up struggling, working long hours, living paycheck to paycheck. The attention of a married woman, especially one as beautiful and poised as Amanda, felt like winning a prize he didn't deserve. He became obsessed with her quickly, memorizing every detail of her life she was careless enough to share. Her perfume, her favorite restaurant, the way she smiled when she lied about her plans, it all fascinated him. What Amanda thought was a casual fling became Derek's entire world. He started following her on social media, creating fake accounts to watch what she posted, and driving past her house to see if her husband's car was there. The thrill for Amanda began to fade, but for Derek it was only beginning. As the weeks passed, Derek's messages became more intense. He wanted to see her constantly, demanded her attention, and began questioning who else she might be seeing. Amanda laughed it off at first, thinking he was just being dramatic. But when he showed up unannounced outside her gym one evening, her amusement turned to fear. He claimed he just wanted to surprise her, but the look in his eyes told her something was wrong. He had grown possessive, and that frightened her. Amanda tried to distance herself. She ignored his calls, stopped responding to messages, and avoided the places she knew he might appear. But Derek wasn't the kind of man who accepted rejection easily. He started sending her threatening messages, reminding her that he knew where she lived, that he knew her husband's schedule. He even sent her photos he had secretly taken of her from his car. Amanda panicked. Her secret life was supposed to be about excitement, not danger. Now, it was turning into a nightmare. Meanwhile, Mark had begun to notice his wife's growing anxiety. She jumped at sudden noises, locked her phone, and seemed distracted all the time. He assumed it was guilt from whatever she was hiding, unaware of the darker truth lurking behind her behavior. Mark's suspicions grew stronger when he found an unfamiliar number repeatedly appearing in her phone records. He didn't confront her yet. Instead, he quietly began investigating. He was tired of feeling like a fool in his own marriage. He wanted proof before he acted. Mark's calm exterior hid a storm brewing inside. He started tracking Amanda's location through a family app they had installed years ago. He saw patterns: her visits to certain hotels, late-night stops at unfamiliar streets, long hours when her phone went silent. Each discovery cut deeper than the last. The woman he thought he knew was living a double life, and he couldn't understand why. Still, he wanted to catch her in the act, not just accuse her. He began setting up small traps, questions about her whereabouts, small tests of honesty, and she failed everyone. Amanda, too caught up in her chaos, didn't notice how closely Mark was watching her. Her focus was on Derek, whose obsession had spiraled out of control. He began sending her messages threatening to expose her affairs to her husband. He told her he had screenshots, proof of everything, and that he would tell Mark unless she continued seeing him. Terrified, Amanda met Derek one last time, hoping to convince him to leave her alone. She promised him money, pleaded for silence, and tried to play on his emotions. But Derek was beyond reason. His obsession had turned into hatred. That night, Amanda came home shaking. Mark noticed the fear in her eyes, but when he asked what was wrong, she brushed him off. He didn't believe her, yet he said nothing. Deep down, he was already planning something. He bought a small hidden camera online and placed it in their bedroom, pretending he was going on a business trip the following weekend. He needed undeniable proof before making his next move. He couldn't rely on suspicion alone. Over the next few days, Amanda tried to go back to her normal routine, but Derek wouldn't stop calling. He followed her to the grocery store, left notes on her car, and even sent her a photo taken from outside her window at night. Amanda started sleeping with the lights on. Every sound in the house made her heart race. She had built this web of lies for excitement, but now it had turned into a trap she couldn't escape. One evening, Derek crossed a line Amanda hadn't thought possible. She received a text message from him with a photo of Mark at work. Derek wrote that he knew where her husband was every day, and if she didn't meet him that night, he would tell Mark everything. Amanda's hands trembled as she read the message. She realized Derek wasn't bluffing. He had been following both of them. She drove out to meet him in a panic, hoping to put an end to the nightmare. But what happened that night would change everything. Derek met her in an empty parking lot behind a gas station. He was angry, pacing back and forth. He demanded she choose between him and her husband. Amanda tried to reason with him, but he wasn't listening. His voice grew louder, his movements more erratic. He accused her of using him, of lying to him, of humiliating him. Amanda realized then that she was dealing with someone dangerous, someone who might actually hurt her. She left the meeting terrified, unaware that Derek had followed her car all the way home to see where she lived. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept checking the windows, jumping at every creak in the floorboards. Mark watched her silently, pretending to sleep. He noticed her nervousness, her late-night phone checks, her trembling hands. Everything about her screamed guilt. He didn't know about Derek yet, but he knew something terrible was brewing. The next morning, Amanda received another message from Derek this time, a video he had recorded of them together. He told her that if she didn't meet him again, he would send it to her husband. Amanda's stomach turned. Her secret wasn't just a personal mistake anymore, it was evidence. A weapon in the hands of a man she couldn't control. Desperate, Amanda deleted the messages and pretended everything was fine, but Derek was losing patience. He was done playing games. He wanted her, and if he couldn't have her, he was ready to ruin her life. What Amanda didn't know was that Derek's obsession was about to collide with Mark's growing suspicion. Two men, one blinded by love, the other by betrayal, were heading toward the same truth. Amanda had created a storm so powerful that no lie could protect her anymore. The double life she had built was collapsing piece by piece, and soon the secrets she buried so carefully would rise to the surface. In the quiet of their perfect suburban street, danger was closing in from both sides. Amanda's desperate attempt to control her secret world was slipping away, and the man she once toyed with was about to destroy everything she had left. The night Derek broke into the house began like any other evening in the Lewis household. Mark had returned home late from work, exhausted and silent, while Amanda pretended to be asleep. The tension between them had grown so thick that even their children could sense something was wrong. But this night was different. Mark had decided he couldn't live with suspicion anymore. He had set up his hidden camera days earlier and was now waiting for proof of what he already feared. He told Amanda he had to leave town for 2 days for a client meeting, kissed her goodbye, and drove off, though he never truly left the city. Instead, he checked into a motel on the outskirts, watching from a distance as his wife carried on with her secret life. That same night, Amanda's fear of Derek had reached its peak. For days he had been sending her threats, his messages turning darker with every hour. He wanted her to leave her husband to be with him forever. She knew he was capable of doing something reckless, and that terrified her. She locked all the doors and windows, checked them twice, and still couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Her phone buzzed with a message Derek telling her he loved her, that he was coming over to fix everything. Amanda's hands shook as she typed a desperate response telling him not to come, but it was too late. Derek had already left his house. Fueled by obsession and anger, he drove through the rain-soaked streets, his mind racing with twisted fantasies of rescuing her from her unhappy marriage. He convinced himself she wanted him deep down, but was too scared to admit it. In his delusion, he believed that if he confronted her husband, he could make Amanda his forever. By the time he reached her neighborhood, his jealousy had consumed every trace of reason. Inside the house, Amanda heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Her heart stopped. She peeked through the blinds and saw Derek stepping out of his car, drenched and trembling. She felt trapped, frozen in terror. Before she could react, the doorbell rang, followed by a pounding knock. When she didn't answer, Derek's voice broke through the silence, calling her name again and again until the knocking turned violent. The door handle rattled, then gave way as he forced it open. Amanda screamed, backing away toward the living room. Derek's eyes were wild, his clothes soaked from the rain. He accused her of betraying him, of playing games with his heart. She begged him to leave, but he didn't listen. He moved closer, grabbing her arm, shouting that she belonged to him. Amanda tried to pull away, but he was stronger. The situation spiraled out of control as she struggled, knocking over a lamp. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the house. Derek, consumed by rage, pushed her against the wall, his hands trembling. Amanda thought that was the end, that he would hurt her, or worse. What neither of them knew was that Mark had returned early. He couldn't sleep at the motel, too haunted by thoughts of betrayal, and decided to come home unannounced. When he stepped inside and heard the chaos, his heart pounded with confusion and fury. He rushed into the living room and froze at the sight before him, his wife cornered, crying, and another man towering over her. The shock burned through him like fire. He didn't think, didn't speak. He lunged at Derek with pure rage, tackling him to the ground. The struggle was brutal. Both men fought violently, fueled by anger, jealousy, and desperation. Amanda screamed, trying to separate them, but neither would stop. The fight moved from the living room to the kitchen, where Derek grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter. Mark, blinded by fury, wrestled it out of his hands and struck him. The knife pierced Derek's side and he fell to the floor, gasping for breath. The reality of what had just happened hit the room like a silent explosion. The rain outside pounded against the windows as Amanda knelt beside Derek, her hands trembling, her mind unable to process the horror. Mark stood frozen, his breath heavy, his hands covered in blood. He didn't mean to kill him. It had been instinct, a moment of madness born from months of betrayal. Amanda looked up at him with shock and fear. For the first time, they were both seeing the truth of who they had become. There was no going back. Derek lay motionless on the floor, and in that silence their entire world unraveled. Mark wanted to call the police, to end the nightmare and face the consequences, but Amanda stopped him. She told him Derek had broken in, that no one would believe it wasn't premeditated, that if the police found out about the affairs, they would both go to prison. Her voice shook as she told him to trust her one last time. Mark didn't know what to believe anymore, but he was too numb to argue. Amanda's survival instinct took over. She grabbed plastic sheets, gloves, and cleaning supplies, moving mechanically as if she had done it before. Together, they wrapped Derek's body and dragged it through the back door, loading it into the trunk of Mark's car. The drive to the woods was silent. The storm had calmed, but the air was heavy with tension. They found a secluded spot far from the road, a place Mark used to go fishing years ago. Under the faint glow of the car's headlights, they dug a shallow grave in the wet soil. Amanda's hands shook so violently she could barely hold the shovel. When it was done, they stood over the grave, covered in mud, their hearts pounding with dread. Amanda whispered that it would be over soon, that no one would ever find him. But as they drove back, Mark couldn't shake the image of Derek's face, frozen in shock and pain. When they returned home, Amanda burned Derek's clothes and wiped every trace of blood she could find. She washed the floors, cleaned the knife, and erased all messages from her phone. Mark sat on the couch, silent, staring at nothing. He didn't know if he was more angry at his wife or at himself. The house that once symbolized peace now felt like a cage filled with ghosts. Amanda tried to reassure him that it was self-defense, that everything would go back to normal. But deep down, both of them knew the truth. The lie they buried that night wasn't just a body, it was the last piece of their sanity. Mark couldn't look at Amanda without seeing blood on her hands, and she couldn't close her eyes without hearing Derek's voice echoing in her head. Days turned into weeks, and the secret weighed heavier with each passing hour. Mark couldn't focus at work, constantly expecting a knock on the door. Amanda acted normal around neighbors, forcing smiles and attending community events, pretending nothing had happened. But every creak in the house made her heart race. She often stood at the window late at night, staring into the dark woods, half expecting Derek to come walking out of them. What neither of them knew was that Derek's phone had been recording everything that night. Hidden in his pocket, it tracked every movement, every mile they drove, every location they stopped at. The same device Amanda once used to keep secrets had now become the key to exposing them. It was only a matter of time before someone found it, and when they did, the web of lies Amanda had built would finally collapse, bringing down everything and everyone trapped inside it. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, but the house on Maple Street felt cold and lifeless. Amanda sat at the kitchen table staring at her coffee, unable to drink it. The smell made her nauseous. Every sound in the house echoed louder than usual, every passing car outside made her tense. It had been 3 days since the night Derek died, and though she had scrubbed the house spotless, the memory clung to everything: the floorboards, the air, the walls. Mark hadn't spoken much since then. He went to work each morning, came home late, and sat in silence. The man who once laughed at her jokes now looked at her as if she were a stranger. Their secret bound them together, but it had also destroyed whatever love was left between them. Amanda tried to convince herself they had done the right thing. Derek had broken in. He was dangerous. She repeated that story in her mind over and over like a prayer. But every night she saw his face, his eyes filled with shock as he realized what was happening. Guilt began to eat away at her. She told herself to keep calm, that no one would find him, that he would simply be considered missing. But her hands still trembled every time she picked up her phone, afraid of seeing his name flash on the screen. Mark, meanwhile, was falling apart in his own way. He barely slept, haunted by the image of Derek's body lying in the woods. He replayed the moment again and again, wondering if it was truly self-defense or if he had lost control. His guilt mixed with fury at Derek, at Amanda, at himself. The woman he had built a life with had betrayed him beyond repair, and yet now he was tied to her by a crime that could destroy them both. He had wanted truth. What he got was a nightmare. By the end of the week, Derek's disappearance made the local news. His friends reported him missing after he failed to show up for work. The police released his photo, asking the public for leads. Amanda froze when she saw it on TV. It was surreal seeing his face on the screen, smiling in a way she'd never seen him smile in life. Mark turned off the television immediately, but the silence that followed was unbearable. They both knew that as long as Derek's body remained undiscovered, they were safe. But it was a fragile kind of safety one that could crumble at any moment. A few days later, that moment arrived. 2 detectives came to their door, polite but firm, asking if they had seen or spoken to Derek recently. Amanda forced herself to act surprised. She told them she had taken her car to his shop a few weeks ago, but hadn't he spoken to him since? Mark backed up her story, his voice calm but distant. The detectives thanked them and left, but Amanda could tell from their tone that something about their visit wasn't routine. They knew more than they were saying. That night, Mark asked her if there was anything she hadn't told him. His voice was flat, but his eyes were filled with something close to fear. Amanda insisted that she had deleted all evidence, that there was no link between them and Derek left behind. But her words didn't calm him. He knew her too well. He could see the panic she was trying to hide. The following morning, a detective called Mark and requested that both of them come to the station for a few questions. Amanda's heart sank. The drive there felt endless. Her hands were cold, her breath shallow. When they arrived, the detectives were waiting with files spread across the table. One of them explained that Derek's car had been found abandoned near a wooded area, his phone missing but his wallet and keys left behind. It didn't look like a robbery, it looked deliberate. Then came the questions: how well did they know Derek? When was the last time they saw him? Did Amanda ever have a personal relationship with him? Amanda stuck to her story, pretending confusion, even indignation. But when one of the detectives mentioned her name appearing in Derek's text logs, her composure cracked for a second too long. Mark noticed it. The detective noticed it. A quiet shift filled the room, the kind that happens when truth is close enough to touch. After hours of questioning, they were allowed to leave. Amanda thought they were safe for now, but Mark's silence on the drive home told her otherwise. He knew she had lied again. He had seen the flicker of fear in her eyes when the detective mentioned the texts. Later that night, he went through her computer, searching through old accounts and deleted files. What he found made his blood run cold. An email chain between Amanda and Derek from months ago, talking about secret meetings, money, and threats. It was enough to destroy their defense completely. When Mark confronted her, Amanda broke down. She begged him not to go to the police, saying it would ruin them both. She promised she would fix it, that she would make it go away. But Mark didn't believe her anymore. He realized he had been manipulated from the very beginning, that Amanda wasn't protecting him, she was protecting herself. The guilt he carried turned into rage. He shouted that he wished he had never come home that night, that letting Derek live might have been the better outcome. Amanda cried silently, realizing she was losing control of everything. The next morning, police cars filled the street again. This time they weren't there for questions. A hiker had found a disturbed patch of ground in the woods where the rain had washed away some soil, exposing what looked like human remains. The detectives quickly connected it to Derek's disappearance. They called both Amanda and Mark back for questioning, but this time the tone was different, sharper, colder. Amanda tried to keep her calm, but as they laid out the evidence, the walls began to close in. Derek's phone had been found buried near the body. It was damaged, but still contained GPS data that traced its final movements. The coordinates matched the exact area where the couple had gone that night. Even more damning, tire impressions near the site matched Mark's car. Amanda felt her heart collapse inside her chest. The investigators separated them for questioning. Under pressure, Mark's restraint finally broke. He confessed to the fight, to the panic, to the burial, but he insisted that it wasn't planned, that Derek had broken in and attacked Amanda. The detectives listened carefully, but they already knew Amanda's story didn't match his. She had tried to paint Derek as a stalker, yet their messages told a different story, one of manipulation, money, and lies. When Amanda was told that Mark had confessed, she sat in silence for a long moment. Then she tried to twist the truth again, saying Mark had forced her to help him cover it up. But the evidence was too strong, the inconsistencies too many. Every lie she had built was falling apart in front of her. As she was placed in handcuffs, the last shred of her composure vanished. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering in disbelief as she was led to the police car. The image of the perfect suburban wife was gone. The woman they once admired had become the center of a murder investigation. Mark watched from the window, his face hollow. The love he once had for Amanda had turned into something unrecognizable, a mix of sorrow and disgust. He knew that even if he avoided a life sentence, he would never escape what they had done. Their secret had bound them together forever, not as husband and wife, but as two people trapped in a story that would define them for the rest of their lives. In the cold gray light of dawn, their house stood silent, stripped of its warmth and illusions. Everything they had built together, every lie, every moment of love, every betrayal was now evidence. The truth they buried in the woods had finally come back, and with it, the end of everything Amanda thought she could control. The courtroom was filled with a heavy silence that seemed to swallow every sound. The air felt thick with tension as Amanda sat motionless beside her defense attorney. Her once flawless appearance was gone, her face pale, her hair unkempt, and her eyes distant, almost hollow. Across the room sat Mark, his expression unreadable, his shoulders slumped under the weight of regret. Months had passed since their arrest, but the shock still lingered. The trial had become a spectacle, a story the media devoured day after day, labeling it the tale of a suburban wife whose secret affairs led to murder. Every headline painted Amanda as the villain and Mark as the husband caught in her web of deceit. The prosecutor's voice cut through the silence, steady and sharp as he recounted the chain of events that led to Derek's death. He described Amanda's affairs with 6 different men, how each one had been drawn in by her charm, how she used them for attention, money, or escape. Derek was just one of them, but he was the one who refused to be discarded. When he threatened to expose her secret life, everything began to unravel. The prosecutor presented text messages, photos, and emails that traced Amanda's manipulations step by step. She had lied to every man in her life, creating overlapping stories and false promises that collided into chaos. Mark's testimony was the most anticipated moment of the trial. When he took the stand, the courtroom fell completely silent. He spoke in a low, steady voice, recounting the night Derek came to the house. He admitted that there was a confrontation, that tempers flared, and that fear took over. But when the prosecutor asked if Amanda had encouraged him to act, he hesitated. That pause was enough. It told the jury everything. Amanda's attorney tried to paint a different picture, a woman manipulated by her lover, trapped in a cycle of emotional abuse, who only helped cover up the crime out of fear. But the evidence didn't support it. The jury saw a pattern: deceit, greed, and control. They saw the messages she sent Derek in the weeks before his death, threatening to ruin him if he didn't leave her alone. They saw how she used her husband's guilt to keep him silent after the crime. When the verdict was finally read, Amanda's face didn't move. She was found guilty of conspiracy and second-degree murder. Mark, who had cooperated and confessed his role, was given a reduced sentence for manslaughter and obstruction. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom like the closing of a door that would never open again. Amanda was led away in handcuffs, her eyes fixed forward, refusing to look at Mark. It was as if they no longer existed to each other. The story spread like wildfire across news channels and social media. People debated endlessly about who was more guilty, the wife who manipulated or the husband who buried the truth. Some called Amanda a monster. Others called her a product of desperation. But the facts were clear. A man was dead, and 2 lives were destroyed because of lies that spiraled out of control. Months later, in the quiet of a gray morning, Mark sat in his prison cell, staring at a faded photograph of their wedding day. He remembered how proud he had been, how convinced he was that they had built something real. Now, all he could see was the illusion. He realized that Amanda's charm had never been love. It was control disguised as affection. The woman in that photo wasn't the one he had lived with. She was a mask, a performance. Meanwhile, in a women's correctional facility miles away, Amanda's days passed in a blur of monotony. The other inmates called her the cheating wife, and though she ignored them, the words stung more than she would admit. She spent hours replaying her past, trying to find the moment when everything started to go wrong. Maybe it was the loneliness she refused to acknowledge, or the thrill she got from secret attention. Whatever it was, it had consumed her completely. Now there was nothing left, no friends, no freedom, no love. Years passed slowly. Mark's sentence was shorter, and he was eventually released, but freedom didn't bring peace. He couldn't go back to their home. The neighborhood still whispered about what happened. He moved to another town, took a simple job, and tried to disappear. But memories followed him everywhere, the sound of Derek's last breath, Amanda's screams, the way their perfect life had shattered in a single night. He lived quietly, visiting his parole officer, avoiding conversations, and writing in a small journal that no one would ever read. Amanda, on the other hand, remained behind bars. Her charm no longer worked in a place where no one cared about her past life. Over time, her confidence faded. She stopped writing appeals and stopped believing she could control the narrative. Her reflection became harder to recognize. The woman who once believed she could outsmart everyone had been reduced to a number in a file. On a cold winter morning, news spread through the prison that Amanda had been found unresponsive in her cell. There were no signs of foul play, no struggle, just silence. The guards said it looked peaceful, as if she had finally stopped running from herself. The world outside barely noticed. Her death was mentioned briefly on local news before fading into another story, another scandal, another forgotten tragedy. When Mark heard the news, he sat quietly for a long time. There was no relief, no joy, no anger, just emptiness. He walked to a small lake near his home and threw the old wedding photo into the water. The image floated for a moment before sinking beneath the surface, disappearing into the murky depths. In that moment, he realized that forgiveness wasn't something he would ever find from others. It was something he had to give himself to survive. Years later, people still remembered the story as one of the most shocking cases in their town's history. Some said Amanda was a manipulative woman who got what she deserved. Others believed she was broken long before the crime, caught in her own web of deceit and longing. The truth was buried somewhere between those opinions, lost to time and human weakness. In the end, the story of Amanda and Mark became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how far ordinary people can fall when lies replace honesty, when desire turns into destruction, and when love becomes a weapon. What began as a secret affair had ended in death, disgrace, and silence. The house on Maple Street was eventually sold to a new family. The walls were painted, the floors redone, the memories erased. But sometimes neighbors swore they could still feel something there, a chill in the air, a shadow at the window, a faint whisper of the life that once unraveled behind those walls. They said it wasn't haunted by a ghost, but by the echo of choices that could never be undone. And so, long after the last headline faded and the camera stopped rolling, the story lived on in quiet whispers, retold as a lesson about temptation, betrayal, and the price of deceit. A wife's secret affairs had destroyed everything in their path, proving once again that behind every perfect life, there can hide the darkest truths.